Okay, let me send you this link. Da, 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 da. And you will edit out this later because nobody wants to hear me sing.
Correct. So you're very busy this weekend, I gather.
Yes, I was just shoveling.
Oh, yeah.
First snow of the season.
Yep. The missus is outside right now, actually. She was just doing the plowing.
Oh, does she? Is that her department? Snow removal?
Yeah. She does it. She takes care of it.
You don't participate in that?
Occasionally push stuff around, but it's her truck. So
Well, there's still like the walkway and such that needs to be taken care of, right?
yeah, I would do some shoveling, but I haven't got out there yet.
Yeah.
I was going to do a little bit this morning, but things got juggled around as they do.
Right. Do you like snow?
Do I like snow? Do I like snow?
Like the first snowfall happens and winter is upon us. Is that sending a dark cloud over your head, or you're like, is that a joy, happiness?
I could take it or leave it.
Huh.
I don't mind it, but it's not something that I celebrate either.
Right.
It's just a change of season. It's just part of life.
You're non-committal to snow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a winter sports enthusiast, so I don't do skiing or anything like that or ice skating. So it's not like a door opening for a new bunch of activities.
Right.
It's mostly just a pain. But it's not so bad that I shake my fist at the sky every winter.
See, I'm always surprised at how many people who've lived in New England their whole lives do shake their fist at the sky every time the first snow happens.
Yeah.
You know, I don't expect everybody to be 6 years old and we're gonna go sledding. I understand, people have grown up and they have jobs to do, and I obviously understand the impact of the commute and all that and shoveling. But it's like, I mean, it's part of what we signed up for, living in a climate where it turns to winter. So
yeah, it's part of living here. I don't think I'd rather live anywhere else in the United States. Anyway.
Yeah, it would, for me, it would sort of be like living in Arizona, and then when the thermometer hit 100, being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how hot it is. Like, you can't believe how hot it is. You live in Arizona. I mean, like, if I'm living in New England and I'm getting upset every time it snows, then I'm getting upset a lot.
Yeah. I shake my fist at the blazing sun in the summer. The snow doesn't bother me, but I don't like the heat.
We only get that a few weeks.
Yeah.
Or so. Although, should be increasing in the years to come. Do you do a holiday tree?
No.
A fake or natural variety? No, you do neither?
No tree. Not even a Festivus pole, no.
Really? No wreath?
No. I'm sure it comes to no big surprise, but I'm really not that big into holidays.
Right. Either from a religious or cultural or familial.
Yeah, it doesn't do it for me. Sorry.
So is there any kind of decoration in the Tom household?
You might find some very low-key Christmas decorations here and there, but you'd really have to search for them.
Right. Like you would have to roll an 18 to 20 on a perception check in order to
Exactly.
find those.
We're not we don't have the Christmas lights blazing away in the neighborhood.
You don't have like a series of inflatables on your front lawn.
Right.
Is what you're saying.
Yep.
I'm wondering if our international listeners would find it strange that there are more than a few American households that have just a ginormous number of plastic and electronic things littering the lawn during the entire month of December, of what shall we say, questionable artistic quality.
Yeah.
Celebrating the Christmas season.
Some people really go overboard. Do you have any people like that in your neighborhood?
We have a couple of houses that have quite a few lights, none that are so over the top. I mean, there are a few appointment viewing houses
where everyone drives by in a caravan of cars.
Exactly. And in fact, there are some houses that they've gone so over the top. There's so many lights that it's spilled over into the yard and the land around, and they've made it a charity thing, and
Yeah.
And the electric company will donate the cost of the power. And so, you show up and drink some hot chocolate, eat some popcorn.
And celebrate American consumerism.
Exactly. Yes. Because in this age of boundless energy, both in the present and the future, what better way to celebrate humanity coming together than excessively consuming such energy?
Just blast all that electricity into space.
Yeah.
In the form of light pollution.
Exactly.
Ho, ho, ho. So, yes, I'm I am a first-class Scrooge when it comes to Christmas.
Well, it sounds like you're true neutral though. It doesn't. You don't sound like you're not out breaking people's lights, right?
Right.
You're not making people come in on the holidays.
Yeah, I don't get bent out of shape if other people really enjoy the Christmas season. I just don't get into it. It's not my thing.
You get a stocking?
No.
No?
No.
Do you exchange any sort of gift on the morning of?
With other family members, not within our own family, we don't do gift exchanging.
Will the kiddies get anything this year?
They might get an extra helping of something or other, some little cat treat.
Right. All right. Yeah. So you don't have the problem that we're about to have, which is a Christmas tree in the house with young cats.
Oh, that's a big problem. Yeah, that's what we had to. That's one of the problems with having a Christmas tree with cats is cats love to climb trees, and if you put a tree inside your house,
yes,
they're all over that. I mean, we at one point in the past we did have a tree a couple of years, but it was just got out of control with the cats just going up and climbing them and knocking all the ornaments off.
Yeah.
So, good luck with that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're a little trepidatious about this. We're moving the tree into the room that the cats are not primarily occupying. The cats do have kind of their own climbing structure.
Yeah.
However, they are quite adventurous and curious these days. So
yeah, you can expect about at least 20% lost in any breakable baubles you have on the tree.
Yeah, that's kind of like what we're afraid of. But c'est la vie. It's either not have a tree, not have the cat, or go for cohabitation of the two. So that's what we're gonna go for. No, but I do generally. It's funny. I mean, obviously the holidays are way over consumerized in the U.S. especially.
Yeah,
but I still like the holiday season. It's probably a fair bit carryover, subconscious after effect, substratum emotional nostalgia from my childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just that I liked all that. Plus, I usually take a little bit of time off from work, and family comes home. I'll see Brother X. Now there's always a Star Wars movie to check out, so
That's right. Yeah, I've got some time off coming up because the university obviously closes during the Christmas break between Christmas and New Year's. So
yeah,
I get that time off every year.
Plus, I do. Back issues aside, I do enjoy the act of shoveling. I find it a pretty cool combination of you're warming up calisthenic, plus it's cold outside. It's like a really nice. The air tastes really good outside when it's snowing, and everything is like nice and quiet and simple. Like to me, a freshly fallen snow over the landscape makes everything feel simpler and quieter, which is in general how my preferred adjustment to everyday life. if I had the input into how society should go, I would definitely go simpler and quieter. So
yeah, you're right. I agree with that. You do get the descent of silence on a good snowy morning. Yeah, which there's one fellow in our neighborhood drives my wife batty. He runs his leaf blower all year long. He was even out there yesterday in the snow running his leaf blower.
Specifically for the leaves.
I guess so. My suspicion is that he's just trying to get away from his family, but I don't know. He just runs it all the time.
And it's very, very loud, I imagine?
Yeah. It's just this ongoing whining drone somewhere in the neighborhood every single weekend.
Wow, yeah, that could get aggravating.
Yeah.
Although I have followed a news story in one of the wealthiest towns in our state. A few industrious, civic-minded individuals with a lot of time on their hands enforcing the decibel level for leaf blowers. Yeah, because in wealthier neighborhoods, the landscape companies will come through during the fall and with their gas-powered leaf blowers and blow the leaves around, right?
Yeah.
And they're pretty loud. But apparently, there are some people who don't want any kind of audio disturbance, and so they make quite a fuss about that.
So just as an aside,
I'm sorry, Tom. We don't we don't bridge any asides or tangents in this podcast, but we can make an exception. Right?
Yeah. Where have we got to as a civilization where something like a leaf blower has been invented and is used? What a colossal waste of technology and energy that is.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with that. We've full disclosure, we have used a leaf blower, our own, on occasion. I don't find it particularly efficient.
No, it's not.
And so I can't imagine. So there's two cases I can imagine applying. One is if you have like some sort of severe shoulder or back issue, such that regular amount of raking is going to cause you a large amount of distress. I could see where a leaf blower could help you out there. But even then, it's not like these things require no energy. I mean, you hold this thing, and if it has any amount of power, it's still a non-zero amount of effort to hold and to carry around and such.
Yeah.
I guess the other case would be if you are in the business of like landscaping and you have, a half a dozen houses of very large scale to do in a day, that the very large, like have you seen the ones where it looks like a shopping cart almost? It's not the handheld, but you're rolling it on the ground. It's got an enormous. Yeah. So those things are pretty efficient. So if you have acres and acres and acres and acres to do, that's better than having to simply do it yourself. But you can cover a surprising amount of ground raking yourself and get a good amount of exercise out of it. That's the other thing too, is that as our society becomes more sedentary, as our work becomes less physically active, we need more opportunity to move our bodies around. I mean, we mentioned briefly before, the amount of research and study of the positive mental, emotional, physical side effects of exercise are pretty ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So even if you're not an athlete, just wanting to maintain a healthy mind, so you need those opportunities. So to lose those to something like leaf blowers, it's not very good.
Yeah. You think, if you don't want to do the work yourself, I mean, just take the money you'd use to buy that leaf blower or the gasoline to run it or the electricity to run it and just give a rake to some local teenager and pay him or her to do it.
Exactly. Well, what happens now is that you pay a local teenager to use a leaf blower. Right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Bah humbug.
Merry Christmas. So we won't be singing any. I have to ask non-zero questions. You know me and Occam's razor, Tom. I have to ask non-zero questions on the possibility that I'll uncover something amazing. So I'm presuming that you don't do any caroling during the holidays.
No, I do not.
Okay. Gosh, can you imagine if you did and I failed to ask you about that? What an
opportunity you would have missed there. Yes.
What uncovered gold that would be. Yeah. I think I will be posting soon. One of the first things I posted on Two Big Geeks Facebook last year during the holidays, which is that wonderful Make It So, Make It So song by Jean-Luc Picard, one of my favorite. Yep. So speaking of Jean-Luc Picard, have you heard news of the apparently in the works planned next Star Trek movie?
Ugh.
I wanted to get your take on this because I saw you tweet about it and I could not disagree with you more about your apparent sentiment. So the story I read is that Quentin Tarantino, director of Pulp Fiction and other type R-rated action movies, is really into the idea of doing a Star Trek movie. He wants to do it R-rated. Apparently, he's met with J.J. Abrams and he's got the green light to do an R-rated Star Trek movie. He's in the process of getting the writer settled, and someone asked Patrick Stewart about it. Of course, actor of plays Jean-Luc Picard, the captain in Next Generation, and he was all into it. Apparently, Patrick Stewart is a huge fan of Quentin Tarantino and said, "Hey, if there was a possibility to reprise Jean-Luc, he'd be into that. So, and you tweeted kind of a negative reaction to that.
I did. Now, as I'm not nearly as a fan of Next Generation Star Trek as you are.
Yeah.
I realize.
Yeah.
But you can't possibly think this is a good idea, do you?
My only reaction, Tom, make it so.
Oh,
engage.
All
Let's
right.
go. Come on.
Now, I also keeping in mind your pacifist tendencies.
Yes.
What is your view on Tarantino as a director?
That's a really good point because it's not like Pulp Fiction has gumdrops and
Or any of his films.
yes. Yeah, he's quite violent. So, I mean, first of all, I acknowledge that not everybody's tastes are my own. Okay.
Mhm.
Plus, I will say, I do sort of profess this, and it's true. I am, pacifist nonviolence. One of the reasons why we both love Doctor Who. But I did see substantially on your recommendation, Mad Max Fury Road the other night.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
Another movie which does not shy away from violence.
Right.
And I thought it was fantastic.
Good.
As you aptly described, a over-the-top, ridiculous self-one-upmanship of action scene upon action scene.
Right.
Quite entertaining. But yeah, so sure, if I had my own personal ideal choice of who was going to do the next generation of Star Trek, I would maybe not pick Tarantino, but much like Devo reinventing Satisfaction, if you're not reinventing and reimagining something, then it's done. At this point, we're never going to, other than something else, we're never going to see Captain Picard again. And I have an arm out and a leg up for Captain Picard. I would see a Christmas special. I would see anything. I want to see more Jean-Luc Picard. I was really disappointed with the final Next Generation movie.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was pretty terrible. But one of the final scenes in that movie with number one, I'm spacing on his name now.
Riker,
thank you very much. So in that last scene when Riker and Picard are leaving, it's the culmination of all these movies and seasons, and Riker's just like, okay, well, it's been great serving with you, and Picard says, yep, all right, have a good time, and then they just leave. Really sad. I was very disappointed. So I need a better denouement for Jean-Luc.
but isn't matching him up with Tarantino like the worst possible way to do that? I mean, of all the Star Trek captains, I mean, just between like Picard and Kirk itself,
Right.
Picard is the one that eschews violence
Yes.
for diplomacy and understanding and empathy.
So I think that's what would be really interesting about it. So if it was just purely a case of Tarantino is going to make Pulp Fiction, but just put it into space, and Picard is going to show up just to draw more moviegoers, then no, I wouldn't be happy with that. So it could certainly go wrong. But if Tarantino was willing to bring his style and approach and yet try to weave it into the Star Trek theme, I think that would be really interesting. Because, the original series and Next Generation as well, they're both sort of fairly idealistic, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
In terms of their vision of the future, is sort of gone beyond money and violence and the at least the Earth. I mean, they have violence with other.
Those are characteristics I would never expect to see in a Tarantino film.
Right. And so is it possible for him to make a Star Trek movie that is loyal to those themes and to that feel, and yet inject his stylings into it? I think that would be really interesting. Plus, it would open up Star Trek to a different audience. I'm okay with reimagining, things that have happened before, and I just really want to see Jean-Luc Picard. I just love him so much. It's like the current Star Trek series Discovery, again, which I can't believe I haven't seen. Actually, I can believe why I haven't seen it. It's because nobody wants to watch it with me.
Yep.
That's my problem, man, with a lot of these things, is that that's why I didn't watch Fury Road for a long time. I couldn't find someone to watch with me, so I finally rooked in my son and his friends. But with Discovery has gotten a little bit of flack for being a little too edgy, gritty, a bit off the idealistic rails from the previous series. And I'm totally fine with that. Like, I think you have to pushed the envelope somewhat.
Yeah, but isn't that the whole modus operandi for Star Trek to begin with? I mean, that's the one characteristic that you think of when you think of the Star Trek franchises is the idealism of it.
Yes,
is the optimistic future, where so much of our sci-fi is dystopian and depressing and apocalyptic. Star Trek gives a positive view of a technological future.
Yeah. So did you watch Deep Space Nine at all?
No, I did not.
Okay, I think you might really dig that. So Benjamin Sisko was the main lead character in that, so Deep Space Nine was more serial like than original series Next Generation, and Sisko's character alignment was much more chaotic good, chaotic neutral almost. And he was much more of a means to an end kind of guy. He had much more of a complex social political situation. They're basically on this outpost that's this convergence of multiple civilizations. And so he has a massive amount of conflict to resolve on multiple layers.
Yeah.
And just is really just trying to find the most practical solution and keep his head above water a lot of the time. And I think in a lot of respects, that situation is more reflective of real life situations than some of the ones that are presented in original series Next Generation. I mean, the thing that is a little off-putting to some people with idealistic versions of situations is that it's not realistic, and so there's a much higher suspension of disbelief. So I think you can find a way to express it. I think it's more challenging, but I think you can find a way to express it that's not so binary. It doesn't have to be everything is awesome, everybody loves each other, and I mean, if there was no conflict, then there wouldn't be any show.
Yeah.
So it's about to what level of conflict do you present, and to what aspects of human nature do you explore? On the other end, I don't. I mentioned this before. I don't particularly enjoy incredibly dystopian. Like, I don't want to watch a future that precludes any hope for humanity. But I also understand the limitations of watching something that just assumes that everything works out, a couple hundred years, and then it's just a matter of let's enjoy the chrome,
Yeah.
So,
well, another reason I'm not happy about Tarantino possibly doing Star Trek is that, most importantly, I'm just not a big fan of Tarantino. Full stop. I just don't want him touching anything that I value.
Okay, so I have not seen much of his work past Pulp Fiction. When you first saw Pulp Fiction, did you like it?
Not really, no.
Interesting. I remember so this was years ago, obviously, and I remember seeing it and thinking it was really creative in terms of plot twists. But maybe that was just because he was taking a little more risk than your standard issue antiseptic pop culture movie, and so major plot diversions were so shocking and revealing that it felt really fresh. But you didn't find that?
I mean, it's certainly one of his best films. It just doesn't click for me. I know I haven't seen all of his stuff, but it's just something about him just puts me off. He's just his style is basically to ape other people's style. And there's not much there that's originally his. He's basically just a remix artist for other people's work, I find.
Okay.
Also, I don't necessarily think he's that all of a great director either. I mean, one thing he is very good at, he's very good at writing scenes. Like a lot of his movies, individual scenes themselves are really, really well crafted. But the films themselves are basically just 5-6 scenes strung together.
Right. In fact, that's what Pulp Fiction is it's a series of short stories, right?
Exactly. And if I was going to characterize his films at all, it would be in that way, that he's a writer of scenes that sometimes work together, sometimes they don't. And with aping other people's styles and throwing in lots of violence.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily appeal to me.
Right. No, I mean, I could definitely see how it could go off the rails.
Yeah.
I just, the other thing I think about is that the Star Trek movies that have been done so far have been fairly well received. They've been moderate successes at the box office. And I wasn't a particularly huge fan of the last one. I thought it was okay. I was not like was not overwhelmed by it. So if in the future, do I want a mail it in okay movie that I'm not that interested in seeing? Do I want no Star Trek movie, or do I want someone taking a risk that could potentially be pretty bad, or could work? You know, who knows? I guess it depends how flexible he is. Although, you know, one limitation too of so I really like several of the actors who've reimagined the Star Trek characters. I really like Scotty and the new Spock in particular. I think they're great. There's a problem though, and in a movie length, you only have so much time for characterization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
particularly in a big Hollywood blockbuster where so much of the screen time is taken up with action and big money shots. So, and it's something that the original series and to a lesser degree the next generation series movies didn't suffer from, because you had seasons and seasons of characterization from the TV series to build off of. You know, the new characters, you haven't really seen them in a TV series before. So if you had a style that was more montage of scene episodic, perhaps you could have more expression of that. Maybe not though. Maybe I'm hoping for more than maybe Tarantino just sees a big paycheck and is like, okay, great.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, yeah. Good luck with it if you get it. Hope you enjoy it.
Such as it is.
Set phasers to kill.
Well, who knows, Tom? You know, we might be in the era of the last human directors anyway, as more and more of human activity gets taken over by automation and computers and machines.
Yeah.
You sent me a link recently.
Oh, you want to talk about AI?
Hey, why not, man? We should talk about it before it starts talking about us, right? I mean, we probably aren't going to get to episode 100 given the level of automation consumption that's going to go on.
Yeah, this headline that just was in the news lately was the first AI headline I saw that made me really sit up and say, "Holy moly!"
Right,
we got to start worrying about this now.
Absolutely. So you were talking about AlphaZero.
AlphaZero, yeah. This is the Google's development of a machine learning AI that they had previously used to learn Go, the game Go.
Yeah, so they had a program, AlphaGo, which was the first program to defeat the world's Go champion, for world's human Go champion.
Yeah, and Go is considered a milestone for AI development because it's way more complex than chess is for a machine to play.
Yes, and reason being, from what I understand, is that the game states just become, there's a combinatorial explosion of game states if you try to map them out. So like by game states, I mean like if you imagine a chessboard, the starting position of all the pieces,
yeah,
that's the original game state.
Right. It's on an 8x8 grid with 16 pieces on each side, whereas Go, what's the size of the grid in Go? It's like 21 by 21 or something like that.
Yeah.
And with just loads and loads of stones on the board. So it's like exponentially more possible positions to calculate in the little tree of possibilities.
Exactly. Right. So tree of possibilities is actually a helpful way to think about how computers used to approach these, and then how this, from what I understand.
Yeah.
And again, we're both armchair machine learnists, AI speculative. But if you remember years ago, Deep Blue was the first IBM's first computer to defeat the world chess champion Garry Kasparov, and that was using what you would call brute force search of the state tree.
It just tries every single possible position and determines which one is the best.
Exactly. So it's like by state tree. So you described the starting position of a chessboard, and if you think of that as one node, and then you start to draw lines in a tree of what are the possible permutations that the board could look like after one move. There's only so many in a chessboard. So there's like the 8 pawns could move 1 or 2 spaces forward, and the knights could move 1 or 2 spaces, right? So that's like 20 possible positions. So if you draw 20 circles coming off of that first circle, then you have like your next layer of your tree. And then from each of those 20, there's the possibility of how the other player could move. So 20 times 20. And then from there, it just keeps going on and on and on. And even with incredible computing power, you can't it's impossible to draw out the entire tree of every possible move. And so what Deep Blue did was say, okay, I'm going to just take the current state of the board and extrapolate all the possibilities. And then when I run out of time, I'm going to stop and I'm going to assign a value to each of those nodes to say, is this particular node advantageous for me? And you can think of like a simple algorithm of like, do I have more pieces than the other player, or are my pieces better positioned, right?
Right.
And so make some determination about which branch of the tree is going to be better for my game to follow. And then you prune off the branches that are not advantageous. This thing called alpha beta pruning, where you evaluate the alpha path and the beta path, and you say, oh, the alpha path is better. So you snip off one branch, and you eventually get all the way back up to how should I move at this level, and then you make that move. And so it's not really intelligent, other than the fact that it just has raw computing power, right?
Yeah, it can follow these paths at lightning speed. Therefore, through brute force, it can find the optimal path.
And the other thing it did too, and that a lot of the chess programs do too as well, is that they feed in
collected human knowledge of opening moves and end game scenarios.
Yes, and so when you're trying to evaluate, how advantageous is this particular board position to my game, that then they're feeding in a whole bunch of past information. In other words, it's aware of the context of the game.
Right. It can take all the historical games played by all the grandmasters in chess history and have that as a reference to check on.
Right. In fact, when it was playing Kasparov, who was the champion at the time, it had a record of every one of his games, and they programmed it specifically to beat him. In fact, some of the hardware was wired, the way that they constructed the hardware for the computer was wired in order to be the optimal chess searching program. So this thing was like super optimized for this one specific purpose. So that was the state of AI like 20 years ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I don't know if you remember, because I took a course in AI when I was studying computer science, and I had a really good teacher who was like basically exposing this idea that like, yeah, don't worry about it. Computers aren't quote unquote intelligent. They just have an incredible amount of computing power. Yeah. And this was way before machine learning and neural networks and all that business. And there was this sort of hype about, oh my gosh, computers just defeated the world chess champion, run for your lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of petered out. And so, slight tangent, Tom, you've ever heard of the hype cycle?
Hype cycle? No, I have not.
So Gartner is this research company. They research stuff. Okay. And they've coined this term, the hype cycle, where it's basically a representation of how people react to new technology.
Yeah.
Where some new technology happens and the media gets a hold of it, and there's crazy stories, and all of a sudden there's this expectation that it's going to take over the world and change absolutely everything. Yeah. And so you could get into the second stage of this, they call the peak of inflated expectations.
Yeah, I like these labels I'm seeing on this chart here.
Okay, so the first one is the technology trigger.
Yep.
And it shoots up to the peak of inflated expectations, and then of course your expectations don't get met. And so you then have the steep decline into the trough of disillusionment.
Mm-hmm. Very well named.
Too late to change the podcast name, you think, to trough of disillusionment? And then, so once that sort of happens, then things are allowed to mature over time a little bit. And so you then get an uptick into the slope of enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And then that new awareness and knowledge to maturely apply the technology begins to bear consistent fruit over time, and you arrive at the plateau of productivity.
Yeah, that's where things all settle out, on the plateau of productivity.
Right. And so I think it's pretty clear to say in hindsight now that the general concept of AI had a peak of inflated expectations 15, 20 years ago, and then we hit a trough of disillusionment in that it didn't immediately change everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think particularly with machine learning and neural networks and how it's being applied today, and just with computer processing power continuing to increase exponentially, we've hit this slope of enlightenment. And so now the question is, are we hitting another peak of inflated expectations, or a peak of inflated fears, or what is going to happen here?
So getting back to the story that
yes
has triggered this hand wringing on our part.
Yes.
the next evolution of this Google AI, it's called AlphaZero now.
Yes.
They basically fed it the rules of chess. No other information. No, there's no history of chess moves. It's relying entirely on self-learning and self-play, machine learning.
Right.
And this new AI taught itself how to master chess and exceeded all human knowledge in chess in under 4 hours. To the point where it could beat any other chess program starting from zero. It taught itself how to do that in 4 hours.
And so, slight caveat here, because the programmers of the programs that it beat have cried a little bit of foul in terms of how they set up the experiment. So, like one of the complaints was that they limited the move time to 1 minute in the chess game, and that's not what the rule is in international chess.
Right.
And one of the most successful chess programs relies on the fact of saving time in the beginning and then using it later on. And so they're like, okay, come on. And there's a couple other things, a couple other complaints that some of the other programs have made about assuming, apparently, and so this program also did the same thing with Go. So it's called AlphaZero, but so it applied it to chess. It also applied itself to Go, and there's another Go type game that I'm forgetting.
Shogi.
Yes, thank you. Where it also did exceptionally well, and so the non-geeky sort of aspect aside. So you mentioned that this is Google. So Google acquired DeepMind, which is the UK artificial intelligence company, and so now they have these programs. And so Google is one of several major tech companies that is heavily investing in artificial intelligence and machine learning these days, and for good reason, because you think about. This isn't just for interest in playing chess, right? You apply these kinds of predictive analytics to financial investments, to government surveillance, to business. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars that are at stake here, and it's I would say along with cybersecurity, artificial intelligence is the hottest by a long shot. Area of computer science right now.
I confess I don't really know a lot about AI.
Yeah.
But from what I do know, this achievement by AlphaZero seemed like it's a bit of a quantum leap as far as a development in machine learning.
It definitely is. So I don't want to detract. I'm just saying that there's a little bit of grain of salt to take with it, because what's going on is that Google knows the impression that this is going to make.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in order to assert their dominance in the area, because these companies are working with governments and militaries and investment firms and etc.
Yeah. This is kind of a Trinity test for AI, I think.
What's the Trinity test?
Just the first explosion of an atomic bomb.
Okay,
ushering in a new age of chaos and destruction.
Yeah. So definitely.
Let me ask you this. Just for some context, because you talked about how the previous AIs dealt with chess programs and the brute force method.
Yes.
Do you have an understanding of how machine learning works?
Yeah, a little bit.
And how it differs from previous brute force attempts to go through this decision tree?
Yeah. So I think I do have a little bit. I'm not professionally trained on it, and I don't do any AI machine learning programming myself. I think I have a toddler's armchair.
Hey, that's good. That's good enough for us,
right? So, so one example we hit on in a previous episode, Tom. Remember we briefly forayed through Quick Draw.
Yeah, Quick Draw.
So the way Quick Draw works in predicting what you're drawing. So, just as a recap, there's a little, we can link to it, but basically you doodle a picture of something like a cat, and then the program is trying to predict what it is that you're drawing. And in order for it to predict, it's not trying to predict what you're drawing based on any specific rules that have been programmed into it, like saying, "Oh, okay, program, you should expect that a cat is going to have 2 ears and whiskers and is going to be about this long."
Yeah.
You basically train it on examples as opposed to explicitly telling it the rules, and then it uses those examples to compare to the input to see if there's a close match. So initially, it doesn't know anything. So initially, machine learning knows nothing, and so you provide it with a large data set of examples saying, here are 10,000 pictures of cats, and I am telling you that these are all cats. And then here are lots of other pictures that are not cats, and I am telling you that these are not cats. And so you're training it, and you're not telling it why it's a cat and why it's not a cat. You're saying, just, okay, computer, assume that these are cats and these are not cats. And so you train it on a data set, and then when it is evaluating a new example, all it's doing is taking that and seeing what attributes it can pull out of that to try and associate with the examples that it's already evaluated to see if it's a match.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there's evolution going on here too, isn't there? Where aren't some of these things like multi-threaded, where it's like, for example, AlphaZero will do all these games where it plays itself, and then of those games it plays, it takes the best player and works out a new set of games from that player and develops that player.
Right. And so it's like I'm going to try this strategy, and if this strategy works better, strategy A works better than strategy B, then I'm going to go with strategy A.
And then try all the possibilities of strategy A until you get strategy A1, and then go from there. Yeah. So there's, in addition to the raw increase of processing power we've had in the past couple of decades, there's been a paradigm shift in the algorithms used for AI as well, I imagine.
So the concept I'm trying to describe are neural networks, and so neural networks, deep learning, and machine learning. And the difference, so that's fundamentally different than having rules that you then apply with massive computing power.
Right. The AI will develop its own rules as it goes along.
Well, here's the thing: is that it's not even using rules.
Oh, okay.
So let me try this example. So say you're trying to determine what the price of a house should be.
Yeah.
Right. And so there might be a half a dozen variables that go into determining the price of the house: the square foot, size of the house, the number of bedrooms, the zip code, the year it was built, etc.
Yeah, all the things you would expect.
Yeah. And so if you were, as a human, trying to come up with a reasonable predictor of what the price should be, you might take these variables, but then you might make certain rules about awaiting these variables differently.
Yep, makes sense.
Right. So you might say, okay, right, like there's a half a dozen things, but I'm going to say that this is twice as important as this variable. And maybe there's layers of this. Maybe I want to say, how appealing is this going to be to a young family?
Right.
Is like a second level variable that depends on zip code and school quality and other such things. And
location is weighted the most.
And so you take these input variables, you define rules that weight those variables, and you get some output. Now you've sort of traversed from inputs through rules to an output by defining those rules. And so you could, in order to write a program that predicts house values, take an entire set of inputs, create a complex set of rules, and use raw processing power to sort of run through all those rules in order to get an output value, right? Mm-hmm. So what machine learning does is that it skips that whole let's define the rules part. What you do instead is you say, here are thousands of examples of house prices. I'm going to give you the end result, and I'm also going to give you a rich data set of all the inputs. So not just the square foot and the zip code, but every possible attribute you could have about a house.
How many windows it has.
Exactly. And I'm not going to tell you how much you need to wait, how many windows. I'm not going to tell you how much you need to wait, how many people have looked at this open house this week. I'm just going to give you all of this raw data, and I'm going to give you the ability to define a set of weighted variables yourself based on however many of those inputs you want. And then I'm going to give you the ability, computer, to take those calculations and feed that into another layer of functions that weights variables, and so on and so on and so on, in order to determine the value. And I'm going to have you run through all these examples, and I'm going to ask you to wire up the system that best fits all of the inputs I've given you in order to predict the outcomes that I've given you.
Okay.
And so then you wire up this system where the program itself can't even say why it weighted the number of windows the way it did. It can't even say why it weighted the zip code the way it did. But what it's excellent at doing is coming up with another example it hasn't encountered before, running through those inputs and then outputting a value that is very close to what the solution is going to be. So for the chess example, instead of brute force running through the game state and trying to determine what's going to happen, it says, okay, how am I going to value this position on this board? Well, I know that I've looked at 1 billion board positions in the past, and now I have this algorithm that determines how valuable that position is. I'm just going to take that board position and run it through and see if it's valuable or not. And it doesn't even have to know why it's weighting those variables the way it is. Like why is it that having 2 rooks at this particular position in the board is advantageous? It doesn't care. It doesn't know. It never defined it in the first place. All you could say is that it's incredibly effective at evaluating that board position and recommending a move. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It is very similar to evolution in a way that it favors beneficial mutations, so to speak, and expands upon those. On Earth, in life, those generations can last millions of years before you get a noticeable change in a species. But on a computer, you can run through millions of generations in a fraction of a second.
Right. And you can train it. So this is the whole concept: is that this system of neural networks and a machine being able to learn, you can't learn unless you have data to learn on.
Yeah.
And it's a limitation of how you can apply it, because these systems aren't very effective without large training data sets.
Well, this AlphaZero system developed its own data set. It started from scratch.
Right. And so it generated its own
data.
Its own data, right.
By playing itself over and over and over again and examining those games based on the rules it understands of chess and on the desired end state of the game, whereas one side wins and the other side loses.
Right. And it did it with far less processing power than these other programs were running on. And it did it without any model awareness of like a chess expert saying, hey, this is a really great program. Like one of the comments I read from one of the chess experts was, I've always wondered what it would be like if aliens came down and they could show us how they played chess. I'm like, okay, now I know.
Yeah.
because this was free of any human imposed influence of chess style. This was not trained on Kasparov's style in terms of saying this is how you play chess.
Yeah, it developed its own style.
Exactly. And it was described, at least by this expert, as just an insanely attacking style with a profound awareness of board positioning. So I don't play chess at all, but apparently that's pretty interesting. So the thing so Tom, do you find this inspiring or frightening?
Yeah, I found it frightening.
Okay, I found it frightening too. So the thing that this makes me think about are the precogs from Minority Report.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Have you seen that movie?
I have, yes.
Okay. So a brief thumbnail on that is that there are some psychics in the future who can see into the future, and they can predict who is going to commit a crime. And so the precog wing of the police will go out and pre-arrest people for crimes that they have
yet to commit.
Right. So imagine, Tom, if you had so these things require massive amounts of data in order to train on, like machine learning, right? So imagine if you had a massive amount of data to train an AI on in order to learn about the predispositions of individual humans.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where you would get this from, but from what people are searching on, what people are buying, what people are sharing, their interactions, and you chugged this through the AI in order to predict who is going to commit a crime, or who is going to vote a particular way, or who is going to support or not support or organize against a political movement.
Yeah.
right? And so you could then take that information and in a very accurate, not perfect, but a pretty accurate, predictive way, act upon that.
Yeah.
Imagine you could fly a drone over a rural environment that combined that social information with the visual analytic information of the environment, and you are able to just tell it, go and purge this area of the world from people who believe this particular item.
Ugh.
You could get fairly efficient and effective in that way.
Just imagine hooking up AlphaZero to Twitter and how much damage it could do. Seeing how much political instability has been caused just from, fake news.
Oh, right. All right. And this is already happening. So I don't know if you don't do Facebook too much.
No, I don't.
I used occasionally check out the news feed there. So I don't know if you've noticed, but the news feed is now infinite. It used to be that you'd scroll down, and when you got past what people had posted, then that was it.
Yeah.
But now the algorithm that Facebook uses to generate content for you is endlessly streaming. And not only is it endless, but it's getting much more effective in terms of what is interesting and compelling to you. And so you are it's harder to take yourself away from that stream of content. And the reason why it is because it's using AI. It's using machine learning to say, oh, people who have your profile, and it's not just your Facebook profile. I mean, there's an ID that follows you to the major players in tech that have very wide and deep profiles on individuals. We're talking about Google, essentially Google, Amazon, Facebook, and what's the other one? I always forget. There's one other. Oh, like Apple. And connecting that, and you just take that massive amount of data, you train it on the machine learning AI, and you pop out what is going to be most predictive for you, what's going to be most compelling for you, and it creates that content for you. Which, if you take the smiley face approach to it, is like, oh, it wasn't. Why is that a bad thing that I now have a stream of content that is really interesting to me?
You're also assuming that the goal of the algorithm is to create items that are interesting for you. What if the goal is to create items that are manipulative of you?
Absolutely. And so, I mean, we've talked about echo chambers and fake news, and how how those streams are specifically designed to activate the most emotionally compelling responses. So, and that's, to me, that's like rudimentary 101 kind of approach to it. And we saw in recent elections that strategically that even that level was very effective.
Yeah, if AlphaZero can master chess in 4 hours, it seems like it would take even less time to master how to get likes on Facebook.
Yes, and the other aspect of this is that because what we're talking about here, this machine learning algorithm is essentially a function, a very sophisticated function. You can just if you're a system program anywhere, you can just call that function from anywhere as a service and get the response back. In other words, you don't have to have a super ridiculous amount of processing power and train your data all up in order to leverage the value of this, right? I mean, that's what they did in order to generate that algorithm. But say you said AlphaZero and you said, okay, give me the most politically incendiary content, and train yourself. Look, take an afternoon and create that for me, right? And now Google just offers this as a cloud API function call that anybody can call in order to inject that. So I think the power of this technology to be injected into mainstream consumer and military and financial applications is going to be quite rapid.
Yeah.
Because you don't need the processing power. All you need is the function. The function can be sold.
Yeah. So this AlphaZero story is like, for me, it was the first time seeing a story like this that made me realize, oh, this is what Musk and Hawking and all those people have been warning us about. This,
right.
I can see it now.
Yes.
So is the genie out of the bottle now, or have we crossed the threshold here? We're never going to capture back?
So, I mean, for me, this sort of rolls up into the higher level observation that yeah, I mean, I think from I think starting with you mentioned the Trinity Project, so I think starting with the atomic bomb and leading up into the internet and with artificial intelligence, we are in an age of humanity where we are children playing with guns, and it's a race of what is going to evolve. Are we going to evolve our capacity to take care of and not destroy each other first? Or are the things that we're playing with going to destroy us? What's your bet? But yes, I would say this is one of several very dangerous genies that are currently out of the bottle.
All right, I have a philosophical question for you.
I'm sorry, I don't do philosophy. I'm too big geeks.
What do you think an artificial intelligence can understand morality through machine learning? Can a machine arrive at the golden rule and not be out of control to the point where it destroys humanity based on its own intelligence and developing its own understanding of morality? So
far, the watershed moment has been about how incredibly effective we can make these tools, but they are, at least in my current understanding, they're still just tools. Like these guns in the hands of children are really dangerous guns, but they're not walking around with two legs and deciding what to do on their own. They don't have willful agency.
Yeah, you can still unplug them.
Yeah, right. Now, so if you're the president of the United States and you want to say, please go and destroy these people for this reason, you can do that, and it's going to do that because you told it to, right? I mean, now and you can tell it. You could. I think a machine learning AI could be very effective at applying morality, but only if it's told to do that, right? If we're following the Asimov guidelines, but I haven't seen any watershed moment of agency on the part of AI. Have you?
A machine just taught itself to master chess without any inputs.
But it was told to master chess. It's not like it was spun off and said, "Hey, go do whatever you want," and said, "Oh, I think I'll go master chess," or I think I'll go kill this person, or I think I'll go save this person. It just went off and did something it was told to do.
So we know we have immoral people in this world. So we need to keep AI out of their hands. Is that the only way we can save ourselves?
Is that the only way? That's a pretty big question. Is that the only way we can save? So AI is a power like nuclear weapon. I mean, immoral people have guns and do immoral things with them. This is just a much more powerful gun. That inevitably it's going to do harm in the hands of people that want to do harm. It's
we survived decades of Cold War basically because of mutually assured destruction.
Right.
The United States and the Soviet Union had so much power in their nuclear arsenal that any use of it would have assured the destruction of the opposing power. And in fact, if you remember back to the movie from the 80s, War Games, the AI in quotes in that movie basically decided the only way to win the game is not to play, referring to nuclear war. Is that just positive thinking on our part, or can we rely on the hope that a super intelligent AI won't destroy us because it can develop its own understanding of morality?
No, I don't think you can rely on that because it's the same. It's like, well, if you point a gun at someone, an innocent person, and you pull the trigger, the gun is not going to stop itself from shooting.
Yeah.
And so it really depends. The only reason why you have that happy, the only way to win is not to play moment is because clearly when they were programming that AI in the beginning, they said one of your conditions that you have to meet, one of your goals is to preserve a large number of people. I mean, if we had a nuclear war, some people would survive.
Yeah.
Right? So there's nothing preventing an individual from starting a nuclear war. In fact, I mean, yes, mutually assured destruction, but we also got lucky in several.
Yes.
There were several close shaves over the course of the Cold War.
that, you know, if the arsenal was left to an AI, would have certainly triggered, but it was human doubt and frailty that prevented the nuclear exchange.
Yes. Yeah, and there's plenty of software today. I mean, I keep harping on guns, but I'm trying to use gun in the most abstract way. I mean, there's plenty of software today involved in weaponry and in hacking, and that does a lot of harm to a lot of people. You know, so we're already using. There's nothing inherent in software. If you tell it to do something, it's not going to manifest agency, on its own. If you tell it, so here would be a different question. If you said, okay, go off and destroy, this country, but don't do it if it's going to have such terrible effects or whatever. Sure, it could apply that, but you have to tell it to apply that.
Well, could a AI through machine learning figure out that in order to come to the most optimal solution to its problem, it needs to manifest itself with agency?
It's to manifest. I mean,
I need to prevent the humans from turning me off.
So it's a bit like the paperclip maximizer, right?
The paperclip maximizer, yes. Release the hypnodrones.
The only reason that the paperclip maximizer gets to that stage, though, is because you gave it the overarching goal of creating paperclips. A computer's going to do what you tell it to do, ultimately.
A simple computer will do what it's told. What about a sophisticated artificial intelligence that develops through machine learning? What if an intelligence is created to create a better version of itself?
Yeah, well, sure, it'll go off and do that.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're playing with fire. I mean, yes. I think the thing that gives me great fear and pause is, and this is kind of the underpinning of like all of my personal economic and military fears, is that you know the parable of the scorpion and the tortoise?
Remind me what that is.
So the scorpion is going along its merry way. It comes to a river and it can't cross the river, and there's a tortoise in the river, and the scorpion says, "Yo, tortoise, can you give me a ride over?" Tortoise says, "Yeah, I'd love to, but you're totally going to sting me. No way." And the scorpion says, "Well, why would I do that? If I stung you, then we would both drown, and that's no good." Tortoise is like, "All right, that makes sense." Scorpion hops on the tortoise's back. Halfway across the river, scorpion stings the tortoise. And as they're both going down in the water, the tortoise says, "Dude, why did you sting me?" And the scorpion says, "It's my nature."
Yep. You can't help who you are.
Exactly. And so if you set up certain rules and then you create conditions for those rules to manifest, then you're going to come to an inevitable conclusion. This is a bit how I interpreted the financial crisis from a decade ago, where we set up an incentivized system for individuals within certain companies to achieve certain ends for their own, for the advancement of their own selfish goals. And the fact that it was going to ultimately bring down the system, it did not matter. There used to be a efficient market theory that you would never, the system itself would self-preserve, because why would any individual agent act to ensure their ultimate long-term destruction? And the reason is because you've incentivized the system. So why would mutually assured destruction is great as long as you have individual agents that are motivated by that. But if you're so limited in your own self-context that you don't see that end, nothing's going to prevent that from happening. I feel like we're not really ending on the happy, optimistic note that we typically do.
Is there some branch in this tree that leads to a positive result for humanity?
So like ultimately, like any of these powers, any of these technologies, I mean, talked about this originally in episode 1. I feel like consciousness has to evolve itself in order to mature and be able to handle these powers without destroying each other.
Do you think governments need to start regulating artificial intelligence as if they were weapons of mass destruction?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. I mean, I think they're already, it depends on what the motivation of the government is, right?
Or the corporation. I mean, Google has the most power in this space right now.
Absolutely. I mean, there are other companies doing similar things.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like cybersecurity as well. I think should governments regulate it? I think there are probably already many in the seats of power in government who understand the potential for this. But right now, the organizations that are already leveraging this are governments
Yeah. Well,
and militaries.
wait until the politicians realize they can use these AIs to win elections, and then it'll be like the scorpion.
Oh, I absolutely. I mean, I think that we're within a decade of that.
Yeah.
That manifesting. I mean, we had sort of the emergence of the power of the social media networks happen during the last network.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's absolutely the next stage. But no, I'm talking more about. I don't think it's that governments don't understand the power of AI and machine learning. I think it's that they already understand it and they're already leveraging and using it. And to regulate it means that they have to regulate it within how they're already applying it. And so why would they be motivated to limit their own capacity to do that, right? You would have to be motivated by the greater good as opposed to the self-preservation of that particular government power.
Oh boy. We have a happy future ahead of us. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yeah, Tom, why did you bring up all this terribleness? So
You brought it up. What are you talking about?
So kids out there, if you're studying computer science, AI and machine learning, that's pretty it's a fruitful area to go into. We need some good people with a conscience going into that area.
Yes. Yes, please. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying the podcast, please help us get the word out by sharing us on social media or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcasts. It only takes a minute and it helps new listeners find us. We thank you for your support.